The next step of the grade analysis after the systematic review is grading the certainty of the evidence. Now, this part takes 3 steps. The first is that each of the studies is separated into whether it was a randomized controlled trial or an observational study. Observational studies, by definition, are non-randomized, and that means that there may be an inherent risk of bias just because of the way the study was done. Examples of non-randomized or observational studies would be case series, where the individuals that were included were people who got a certain disease, for example, or cohort studies, where everyone born into a certain year, for example, are followed over a period of time. So because of the different ways that studies are done, some have more inherent risks of bias. Randomized controlled studies, we know, are the gold standard. So they start with an assigned high certainty of the evidence that's produced from them. On the other hand, non-randomized or observational studies start with a grade of low certainty. Now, the scores for both of these types of studies can be upgraded or downgraded, and we'll talk a little bit more about what causes those scores to change in the next couple of videos. But for purposes of today, know that that's what they're assigned the scores based on the study design. And then in the next step, they're upgraded or downgraded, and that's based on the group of studies. So, for example, if we're trying to determine whether a vaccine decreases hospitalization rates, all of the data from the randomized controlled studies would be evaluated and scored, and then all of the data from the observational studies would be pulled together and looked at as a body of evidence and scored. In the third step, the evidence from the different types of studies needs to be evaluated overall, and there are 4 possible scores: high certainty, moderate certainty, low certainty, or very low certainty. And so if we continue with our example of hospitalization decreases after vaccination, all of the randomized controlled studies, as well as the scores from the observational studies, would be looked at as a whole and assigned a score. And typically the score is the highest score that was given in that category for that outcome, because we know that there are some data that we're certain we can rely on the results from, that there weren't issues with the data. After that, then all of the critical outcomes that were deemed important at the beginning of the grade process have scores, and then the body of evidence as a whole is reduced to a single score based on what were the assigned scores for each of those critical outcomes. And that would be the final score for the grade analysis. And that typically is the lowest score that was given to those critical analyses, because that shows us where the limitations of the data are. And that's good for scientists because they know where additional studies might be needed. You can see all of the grade analyses on the ACIP's website.